There's something going on. Freedom is in danger. Agents of the state, they taking children from the manger. Oh, they will sacrifice your kid. Take Brendan Dassey, that's exactly what they did. They needed someone, oh, Jody wouldn't flip. They looked around, saw him quick. Oh, it made so much sense why. Oh, Brendan Dassey, he was Stephen's alibi. There's something going on in Wisconsin that's not kosher. We better stop, let's all take a look closer. Oh, they will sacrifice your kid. Take Brendan Dassey, that's exactly what they did. They visit him once, they visit him twice. They make him feel so safe, sandwiches, soda, so nice. No cameras rolling and under no lights. Who knows what went on up in Fox Hill Monday night? There's something going on. Freedom is in danger. Everything about this kid getting stranger and stranger.
Ain't that the truth?
All we know, they will sacrifice your kid. Oh, Brendan Dassey, that's exactly what they did. March 1st, alone in a room
With Bert and Ernie,
no parent present
and no attorney.
4 hours later,
With the touch of the knee,
they
and finally get Brendan to agree.
There's something going on. I said there's something going on. Oh,
They will sacrifice your kid. Take Brendan Dassey, that's exactly what they did.
There's something going on. I said freedom is in danger when the agents of the state can take the children from the manger. Oh, they will sacrifice your kid. Take Brendan Dassey, that's exactly what they did. Take Brendan Dassey, oh, that's exactly what they did.
Indeed. Indeed. Hello, everybody. How are you today? Let me just get this off of there. Hello, everybody. So, let me see the chat here. Yep, Stacy's the bomb. Je parle juste assez pour passer. Wow, Travis, you speak French? Yeah, please, if you don't mind, hit the like button. It does help the video get shared around a little bit more by YouTube's algorithm when you do that. So any help, is appreciated. And oh yes, and I want to introduce. I have 2 new moderators. Well, I'm going to in a second as soon as I can find her. There she is. Okay, so for those of you who don't know, JB has been made a moderator. I made him a moderator yesterday. Today, we are making Denise. That's weird. There it is. We're making Denise a moderator. So the idea here, the reason why I'm, making the more moderators basically is I want to try to keep the live chat less distracting. I've been getting messages from people who, they say, I really love your videos. I really love your information and that sort of stuff. But they keep expressing this thing that the live chat is distracting because it's the idea of the chat is obviously to talk about what's going on in the, what I'm talking about or what's being talked about. And I guess, there's a fair amount of people that are messaging me saying that that live chat is getting a little distracting because, some people are saying because basically that a lot of the stuff getting talked about there isn't really to do with, what's being talked about. So what we're trying to do is trying to get the live chat to be a little bit more, based on what we're talking about. It's nothing personal. It's just, we're trying to make it less distracting. And on that point, okay. And on that point, Falcon, there's going to be now, my moderator is going to be watching Falcon. If Falcon can't stick to the subject matter that's being talked about, then his comments are going to be removed. If he can stay on point with what we're talking about, then his comments can stay. My moderators have been instructed. They know what I want and what I'm expecting here. I hope none of you are offended by this, but it concerns me. I don't want people turned away from this channel just because they find the live chat distracting. That would just be a tragedy if people didn't tune in to get the information because of that. So what I'm just trying to do is just trying to make it a little bit more, where it's less distracting, basically. Really, that's all it comes down to. You're welcome, music lover. Thank you. So that's what my new moderators are here to help maintain. Amber is also a moderator. Marissa is also a moderator, but I haven't even spoken to Marissa in probably 4 days. It's probably been 4 days, I think, since I talked to Marissa. And I assume that that's because she's busy over on Laura's channel. She was Laura's moderator before she was my moderator. So I assume that that's what's going on there. But I'm sure when Laura gets back to regular, when she's not doing the 12 days of Christmas like she's doing right now, and she goes back to just a couple days a week, I'm sure we'll see a lot more of Marissa here. But I'm just trying to make, more people here that can kind of regulate this chat. Because as you guys know, when I'm going through documents and stuff like that, I can't really see the chat anymore. Because when I do it this way, when I'm trying to give you guys documents and things like that, when I put up a document, I can't see anything that's going on in the chat. I'm working on that. I'm going to get a third monitor so that this will be, but yeah, it's just a lot of moving parts, folks. A lot of moving parts going live. Really, seriously. It's just, so that's our goal. That's our aim. I hope everybody's cool with that. We just want to try to keep it about the subject matter of the video. That's all. Well, that's fine. And that's true, Falcon. Yes. Everybody on topic. Yes. Everybody. If people are focused on the chat, then they aren't listening to what you're saying. Yes. And that's what they found, that they were looking over at that chat too much, and people were telling me that they are disabling the chat while they watch, which is fine. But my point is, the live chat is supposed to go along with the video. It's not supposed to be like some crazy thing next to the video to distract everybody's attention. I don't know. Look, I got enough complaints that I really do want to try and rein it in a little bit. I don't mind you guys talking and stuff like that. I love the fact that you're all here. I think it's absolutely spectacular that everybody shows up and is eager to learn more and all that stuff. It fills my heart up that you guys are all that interested in all that. I love it. It's just, I just don't want to be turning away other potential people who want to tune in here to get information because they find that the chat is just a little bit, chaotic. Okay. That's basically, I guess, the best word to describe it. I would like that the chat is in sync with your topic, easier to follow. Yeah, and that's generally the way most people feel. So I figured this wouldn't be a huge problem, but I figured there might be a couple people that have a problem with it. I'm sorry for those of you who might, but we really just want to make this, we want the chat to go along with the subject matter. It's just, I don't mind hearing Falcon's thoughts either. I, in fact, welcome them. It's just that when we're talking about, if we're talking about Steven or so, like, well, let's say today if we're talking about Brendan, and if Falcon or anybody else is talking about the bones in the burn pit and the this and that and whatever, and something that's completely off topic, then we're going to shut that down. We're going to shut that down. We're going to try the best we can to keep the chat centering on the subject matter of the video, which today's subject is Brendan Dassey. You guys clearly heard me last night when I was reading that motion from Michael Griesbach about Colburn's defamation lawsuit, and the way that they were saying there was overwhelming or what did the word he use? Overwhelming physical and circumstantial evidence to, you know, was used to convict Brendan and Stephen or whatever. It's like, there was no physical evidence against Brendan. There's no physical evidence against Brendan. None. Zero. All you have is circumstantial evidence against Brendan. And that's it. That's all you got. So that's, you know, I just, and to rely on it's like I said, like the way I named this video, to rely on Brendan Dassey's statements that he made in his confession or coercion, as I really refer to it, to rely on those statements. I mean, you're standing on shaky ground. If you're going to be relying on the things that Brendan said, you do so at your own peril, Mr. Griesbach. So, you know, yeah, that's the way I feel about that. Everyone's different opinions are fine. But like I said, if you want to go off topic, wait till the hangout after the live. When you go into the hangout after the live, anything goes. You can talk about whatever you want. I will not say a word. Okay? But during the lives, I would like to try to keep it, you know, I think you guys understand what I'm saying. See, can we just keep the chat on topic and asking questions, etc.? Anything else? Talk about it in the hangout after. Right, exactly. Save the tangents or the things that are kind of going off topic. Save that for the hangout after. Trust me, there's going to be a lot of people in there. There's going to be a lot of people in there after the live that are going to be wanting to talk and discuss and do all those things. And hey, anything goes in that one. Anything, you can go in there and you can talk about whatever subject you want. I will not say a word. Okay. So just want to make that clear. Thank you, Denise, for posting that link. Anybody that wants to join the hangout, it's called Cozy's Wrecking Crew now. They've now named it Cozy's Wrecking Crew. So if you want to join it, there's the link Denise just posted. Feel free to join in there and have some discussions with us after the live. You know, it's kind of a good place to go, you know, because you kind of you watch the live and you kind of get a little worked up and you get thinking you want to talk to some other people. So that's why it's great that these hangouts are there and you can all join them and everybody can have a conversation and talk about the case. So it's really nice. So I encourage everybody to do so. I think it would be great if documents talked about on Erekose's videos were all on the website so we could all go to the document that he's talking about. Oh, yeah, you know, Lucy, that's a very good point, Lucy. That's you know, that's a fair point. And I think maybe as we move forward here, as Cozy's Wrecking Crew and I continue to work together here, we may be able to make that happen. Where I can just get it all ready. I can just post the links in the information below the video so that people that want to go check those links while I, you know, even though I have it up on the screen, people may want to open it up on their own so that they can look around, whatever. So we can work that out. We can get that. We're moving in a direction where that is really possible. You know, I always try to put the links in below my videos as best I can, but sometimes I'm in a rush. I'm literally running in the door after work and trying to get live, you know, go live in a timely fashion so that you guys aren't up until 2 a.m. I mean, it's my goal. I know it's not always, I know it doesn't happen to work out like tonight at 9 o'clock. I know the people in Central Time Zone it's 11 o'clock. The people in the East Coast, it's 12 midnight. And the folks over in the UK are cursing my name, going, damn you, Erekose. You know, so I do the best I can, and I am sorry, folks, that I have a 9 to 5 that monopolizes a great deal of my time. Let's see here. Come and get wrecked. It's not that kind of wrecking crew, T1. There is a website that they can share. Yeah, perhaps my moderators will share it here. There's a website where Cozy's Wrecking Crew are gathering information together, gathering documents and links and articles, and they're creating a website to, you know, to navigate some of this information and stuff like that. So we're definitely going to work on, you know, getting that website to, you know, expanded and built up more. And with, you know, we're working on it. It's, you know, we've only just started, but I'm excited to see what all these lovely people that have become part of the Cozy's Wrecking Crew, what they're going to, you know, continue to come up with, what they're going to continue to do, the things they're going to continue to find. It's just that it's absolutely awesome to see this level of interest, this level of support, this level of, you know, just people just really, you know, giving a damn, and I love it. I'm loving the Wrecking Crew. Yeah. Hey, they're a bunch of cool people. I love to go in there and talk the case with them too. I wish I had more time to do so, really. Thanks for explaining the zones, Dad. Yeah, well, El Fallon, to be fair, trust me, there's a lot of messages I get from people all day long while I'm at work. There's a lot of things that get sent to me that I don't share with everybody. So, but, you know, if I, you know, the reason I'm bringing up the time zones is because that's something that people have said to me. The people in the UK have expressed that they wish I would go sooner. And I've had to explain that that's why I try to go so early on the weekends. In fact, I'm going to start going at 11 a.m. on weekends, just because I want the UK peeps to be able to tune in and not be comatose, you know, or wishing they were in bed. So I'm doing the best I can on that front. I hope you guys can all bear with me on it. I hope we'll be able to work that all out. Don't get too down on El Fallon. I think she was just joking mostly. Does Brendan's confession actually have a topic? We could talk about just about anything and claim it relates to BD confession. Can you, Joseph? Give it a try. If it goes off topic, you'll get deleted. Your comment will, not you. My sleep has been wrecked ever since I joined. Yeah. Yes, but I do my best to be there on time. Let's see here. I got to go, Eric. Bedtime. Okay. Well, good night, crazy Airedale lady. All right. Tighten chat up to BD topics, and then life sleeps lost. Yeah. So that's something that happens when you get into this case or these cases. You know, you start staying up later and looking into things and reading documents and talking with other people, and it just happens. Oh my God. The first year that I was into this, oh geez, I was getting very little sleep. Now I've learned to dial it back a little bit. And I basically try not to ever go past midnight, but sometimes I still do. But I definitely have tried to dial it back. But the first year, man, I was just nuts, working on 2 or 3 hours sleep every day. It was nuts. And then I'd be catching up on my sleep on the weekends. It was crazy. You can only hold that pace for so long before it gives up. Anyways, to get onto the topic of Brendan now. Hold on just a second. To get onto the topic of Brendan now, I just want to kind of talk a little bit about Brendan today, because the Wrecking Crew is working on something I should say we are working on something. Something for Brendan, really. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through, after seeing Michael Griesbach's comments about how, Brendan, his comments about Brendan yesterday just got me going. So I think it will, what we're going to do is we're going to point to all the shady things that went down with Brendan. We're going to point to all the stuff that is just absolutely ridiculous with Brendan. We're going to do our best to kind of go through comprehensively and come up with a lot of the big points of what makes Brendan's confession so ridiculous. And we're going to try and get it into a nice uniform format so that I can go into a video and go live and just show you guys a bunch of the things that in a kind of, nice succinct way, all of just the crap when it comes to Brendan's confession, just all of the horse hockey that is going on there. Three now. Okay, so there are 3 options under the notification bell now. Make sure the right one is checked. So that notification bell, you got to set it right, otherwise it doesn't really work. So yeah, be sure to check on that. I want to ask about the mail that Brendan took Stephen, but what mail? Ma Avery reported getting the mail that day. Exactly. That's one thing. That's one thing that I'll go ahead and bring up here in a minute. But where I want to start with Brendan, let me just take a quick look here. Brendan confessed several times, not just once. Do you know that, Dorian, several is roughly 7? Do you mean a few? I think he meant a few, or a couple or a few. He confessed in March 1st. Well, I wouldn't call it a confession, honestly, but there was February 27th where they fed him things, and then he spit back what they said to him. You have March 1st where they essentially just fed the entire narrative to him. And he wasn't able to spit it back in a succinct way. That entire thing is just a convoluted mess, that confession. And then you got the confession that was a result of Mike O'Kelly and Len Kaczynski. So if you're looking at Brendan's statements and Brendan's confessions and you're standing on that as proof of anybody's guilt in this, if of Stephen or Brendan's, if you're standing on Brendan's statements as proof of that guilt, you're standing on shaky ground. I'm sorry, you are. It's up to you to do so, but you are standing on shaky ground. Definitely. I think BD was the biggest victim besides TH. Certainly, I can definitely agree with that. Yeah, Brendan, and that's just it. There's no rhyme or reason to this. How does Brendan get life for, especially when there's just so little evidence? Everything in there in his trial was ridiculous. I'll come to that in a minute, but the trial is kind of the last thing. Where I want to start is November 6th. Okay, November 6th of 2005. Okay, that's where I'm going to start. The reason why I'm going to start there is because I feel it very well illustrates law enforcement's how craven they were to coerce Brendan Dassey. They were, it's just, they were just so hell bent on it. And the reason why I bring up November 6th is because they pulled Brendan and I believe Blaine over. Anyway, they pulled. It wasn't Blaine. anyways, they pulled Brendan and one of his brothers got pulled over. I forget which one. Got pulled over, and so they're interrogating Brendan in a car there, and you'll remember it because it's the confession where they got a metronome going the whole time. It's like click, 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 right? So it's annoying as hell. But in that interview, Officer O'Neill makes a very clear, very distinct promise to Brendan. Okay. Reason why I bring this up. The courts seem to think that because this all happened in November and it was 4 months before March or whatever, 4 or 5 months before March 1st, that somehow that promise wouldn't have stuck with Brendan, especially when he's dealing with Tom Fassbender and Mark Wiegert, who are giving him all of these reassurances, and all that stuff. And so to suggest that Brendan wouldn't think of the time that he was promised that he needed to stop worrying about going to jail because that wasn't going to happen, because that is exactly what Officer O'Neill told him. That is exactly word for word what Officer O'Neill told Brendan on November 6th. Okay. That's why that confession, or that's why that interview never gets used in anything. In fact, Brendan didn't even confess that time. They were browbeating him. They were trying their damnedest to get him to say something incriminating, but he just didn't. And like I said, they made him an actual distinct promise. He basically says it just like he goes, I need you to stop worrying. I need you to not stop worrying about getting arrested and going to jail, because that isn't going to happen. And tell me anything more, he says, right? It's you're not supposed to do that. But they didn't use that confession. They didn't use that interview. But I assert that Brendan would have remembered that promise. And when Tom Fassbender and Mark Wiegert were making all of their reassurances to him, I am sure that promise stuck out in his head. It probably helped him it probably helped in the fact that he became more suggestible, probably because of that fact. Then you have Tom, then we move to February 27th, where they suggest that he saw something in the burn barrel, that he saw something in the fire, toes, this and that. They suggest like 4 or 5 things to him, and he basically spits back exactly what they said. That is not a confession. Okay, it's not a confession when you feed it to somebody. When you tell somebody what you're expecting to hear, see, that's not the way. That's not a way an interrogation works. You're not supposed to tell them what you want to hear. You're supposed to ask them questions and have them volunteer the information so that it's credible, more credible. And then you can possibly go and corroborate those things. But that's not the way they did it with Brendan. They basically fact-fed him the entire thing. But even on the 27th, then on the 1st, and going on even into May 25th or whatever, when O'Kelly throws him to the dogs again, throws him back to Wiegert and Fassbender again. That's when they bully him. They bullied him again. Told him, you better call your mom and tell her what you told us, after they basically coerced him again. And they told him, you better call your mom or else we're going to tell her. And that suddenly gets Brendan very afraid. Imagine if you're in jail, you're in prison, you can't do anything. And now you got these 2 officers that are threatening to go tell your mom some stuff. And, you don't think about how helpless Brendan would feel in that situation of being in prison, and he's got these 2 officers browbeating him again and all that. Think about how you would feel if you were Brendan, and suddenly they're going to go tattle to your mommy if you don't do what they say. I mean, it's just all of the psychologically coercive tactics that they use against Brendan are just deplorable. I mean, it's just they're just horrible human beings, in my opinion. Fassbender and Wiegert are just 2 terrible human beings. And yes, Kratz is too, but Wiegert and Fassbender, what they did to a 16-year-old kid who clearly really didn't have anything to do with this, it's clear as day to me. Some of my friends call them child abusers, and I think that's really not far off of the mark. All right, I'm going to cut to some of the comments here for just a second before I move on. Oh, absolutely. I mean, we were following that. Okay, so here, J. Michael Miller. I got so much hope when the first appeal in the season 2 was found in his favor. Absolutely. You had number 1 Judge Duffin granted his habeas relief at the federal district court. Once that happened, of course, Brad Shimmy Sham Schimmel appealed it. So he appeals it to the 7th Circuit Court, federal court. Appeals it to the 7th Circuit Court. It goes before a 3-judge panel. Brendan wins again, 2-1. That's now 2 times Brendan has won. Okay, now Brad Shimmy Sham Schimmel again decides he wants to appeal the decision. And so he asks for an on-bank review. Okay? On-bank reviews, it's okay. Let me explain something about an on-bank review and how common they are, or I should say how uncommon they are. You have a better chance of being heard by the Supreme Court. Okay? The odds, or the statistics and the odds of it are that you have a better chance of being heard by the Supreme Court than you do in an on-bank review. So it's more than just a little strange to me that Brendan comes off of 2 wins, and then suddenly Brad Shimmy Sham Schimmel is throwing this Hail Mary asking for an on-bank review, and it gets granted. And not only does it get granted, but then a judge suddenly retires right before, so that so that there's not an even number of judges, taking away the possibility of a tie. Because if there had been a tie, Brendan would have automatically won because he had already won twice before. Okay, that's to me the timing of the judge that stepped down. I can't say that it's like that it was done purposefully or anything like that, but I got to tell you, the timing of it was quite interesting. I'll put it that way. And so you have him. So Brad Schimmel asked for this on-bank review, and it goes against Brendan. And suddenly, everything that had been happening just went flat. So then they have to appeal to they have to file a writ of certiorari with the Supreme Court, and we all know that was eventually not heard by the Supreme Court, which I think is profoundly just a mistake. I understand that the Supreme Court has certain, they conduct themselves in a certain way. They have certain ways of determining things, but the fact of the matter is Brendan is an international phenomenon. Okay, there's so much attention on that case, so much discussion and argument going on around it, that it would have been prudent for the highest court in the land to take a look at it and give a ruling, give some kind of decision to possibly direct the lower courts in the future, and for there to be some piece of case law that other juveniles can point to in the future. I really seriously think the Supreme Court dropped the ball, really badly dropped the ball here. They have not weighed in on juvenile confessions in 40 years, I believe it is. Last time they weighed in on one was in like the 70s. So it's been a very long time since they've issued anything regarding juvenile confessions or interrogations and the voluntariness thereof. And I really, truly feel they missed a huge opportunity, because the attention that's on Brendan would have made any decision that they made, with all the attention that was on Brendan, it would have made that whatever decision they made, it would have gotten a great deal of attention, and it would have been, it would have gotten noticed. And it would have had a good chance of helping out juveniles in our criminal justice system. Because right now, juveniles are not in a good position in our in our criminal justice system. I have an entire series of videos about the wrongful convictions of youth, and I'm continuing to add to that all the time. I continually make more wrongful conviction of youth videos so that people can see the common threads that run through these wrongful convictions of juveniles. There's always very similar themes running through all of them. They let him to talk about the shot because he wasn't coming up with it. Yeah, he was guessing. Oh, we cut her hair. Oh, we stabbed her. Oh, he hit her. Oh, he's guessing all these things because he doesn't know what they want. He doesn't know what they're talking about. He just doesn't know. And that's what makes that obvious. He doesn't know. He's been so pliable and willing to say whatever they wanted, but he couldn't guess what they wanted. And it's clear. And when they ask him, oh, well, why didn't you tell us that? And he doesn't say, because I couldn't remember. He doesn't say, because I forgot. He doesn't say anything like that. He says, because I couldn't think of it. Do you understand that wording? Because I couldn't think of it. That means he was saying it. He basically was saying, I couldn't guess what you wanted. I couldn't guess what you were wanting. That's what he's saying. That's by phrasing it that way. That's what he's saying. So it's, to me, mind-boggling that this continues. See, I would buy into their BS story if everyone was investigated and looked at equally, but the fact that Stephen and Brendan were targeted in and of itself is effed up. That's true. That's true. But more beyond that, Rania, is you look at that confession, dude, and that confession doesn't come from Brendan. It doesn't. It comes from the investigators and probably ultimately came from the sick mind of Ken Kratz. Personally, that's my opinion. Look at how much relish Ken Kratz was giving that press conference. I mean, it was like his birthday. It's just like ridiculous. Thank you, Julie. Let's say, does BD have any other remedies? He will. As more and more evidence continues to emerge, I am confident that there's going to be something that's going to be useful to Brendan's lawyers that they're going to be able to use to get him back into court. I guess nobody knows the answer if they could use this interview to get him a new trial because it would be new evidence. Which interview? Let's see. Manitowoc Police Department is full of narcissists. Let's see. When I was watching MAM2, my heart was breaking and breaking when I saw Brendan thinking he could go home. Then not. Then yes. Then no. It makes me cry just thinking about, yeah, I mean, he was getting jerked around there. And it's like I've said before, the guilters, the state, Kratz, all of them, they're saying, oh, yeah, the unbanked decision went against him. Yeah, but let's think about this for a second. A total of 8 federal judges, okay, weighed in on Brendan Dassey's case. A total of 8 weighed in, okay? It just so happens Judge Duffin was at the district court, not at the circuit court. Had Judge Duffin been at the circuit court as well, it would have been 8, it would have been 4-4. But anyway, so you had Judge Duffin as one federal judge voted to give Brendan his habeas relief. You then have Rovner, Williams, and Wood. That's 4. Then on the other side, you had Ken, Hamilton, Sykes, and that other idiot judge that never even said a word the entire time. All he did was laugh. I forget his name now, and who cares, because all he did was laugh, so he's an idiot. But you basically had 4-4 when it comes down to it. Of the 8 federal judges that weighed in on Brendan Dassey's case, it was a split, 4-4. So that's significant. You should watch The Innocent Man. Yeah, there's a lot of things I need to do. That is true. Brendan's interrogations are in queso. All right. So moving on from the on bank, then we move on to the Supreme Court. Laura Nyrider and Steve Drizzen file for the writ of certiorari. And something pretty darn unprecedented happens. It's like I said, there's so much behind Brendan. There's so much behind him. And if you don't believe it, you only have to look at the 6 amicus briefs that were filed in his favor at the cert stage. Okay? That doesn't happen. Okay? Most entities that write amicus briefs, friend of the court briefs, they don't bother writing them at the cert stage, because at the cert stage, there's such a small chance that the case is going to get taken by the Supreme Court that most entities out there will not write an amicus brief at that point. However, for Brendan got 6. That's kind of unprecedented. That doesn't happen a whole lot. It doesn't happen very often. And those briefs are brilliant. Those briefs are just amazing. You got the law professor's brief, very interesting. You got the current and former prosecutor's brief, very interesting. Juvenile Law Center brief. Juvenile Law Center is the largest, entity there it's in Philadelphia, but it's like the biggest entity that really looks after juveniles in our criminal justice system. They make it their business to care about what happens to juveniles in our criminal justice system. They filed a brief. You had the Innocence Projects. You had the law enforcement trainers amicus brief. I mean, you just had all of these people from all different parts of the criminal justice system got together and filed these amicus briefs at the cert stage. Amicus, just to make this clear, okay, at the cert stage, they don't usually file them. When let me put it this way, when amicus briefs usually get filed is after the Supreme Court accepts a case and grants cert or certiorari. That's when people usually write the amicus briefs, because then they know at least that the Supreme Court is going to consider the case. They don't want to waste their time usually on cases that are at cert. But because Brendan's case has so much behind it, people care so much about what's going on with Brendan's case that we got 6 brilliant amicus briefs at the cert stage for Brendan. I think that's significant. I think that's something that stands out. So no matter how hopeless people may feel for Brendan, don't. There's just too many people out there that are paying attention and give a crap what happens to him. This isn't going to go away. The state of Wisconsin is hoping that it will, but it's not. It's not going to go away. They can hope till the cows come home. It ain't going to happen. Falcon saying, BD indicated, and I will have to find it, that some of TH's bones were transported to the quarry. Yeah. And guess what, Falcon? I guarantee you, I'll go into the interrogation where he says that, and I guarantee you within 5 minutes before he says that, we will have the investigators suggesting to him that Stephen took bones over to the quarry, because they needed to try to explain why Teresa's bones were scattered everywhere. So they were suggesting it to him, just like everything else, Falcon. But we'll see. Go ahead and bring us up the link. We'll go through it, Falcon. We'll find out. Not to mention the fact that Brendan knew where, anyways. Let's see, where the cop promised him something that you were just talking about. Yeah. Let's see. We need to stay on top. Okay. Falcon. Yeah. Erekose is spending his time with us. Show him the respect he deserves. Thank you, Denise. If what Falcon is saying is irrelevant, please ignore him. I'm talking about the confession of Brendan Dassey. Yes, you are. Falcon's statements have been about Brendan Dassey, so those are fine. If he deviates from Brendan Dassey, then you can delete it. So they were trying to pressure the Supreme Court. Well, that works well, don't it? You have a very interesting outlook, Dorian. I really, it's funny. People try to suggest that supporters of Stephen and Brendan, I heard that Ken Kratz was trying to suggest that we're un-American because we don't support his lame narrative. But then I look at a comment like this from Dorian Hawkmoon. So they were trying to pressure the Supreme Court. Well, that works well, don't it? Pressure? Amicus briefs are a normal thing that happen with courts. Friends of the court, Dorian. Friends of the court. That's what amicus means. Friends of the court. Okay? So you say bully. But how can that be, Dorian? How does your logic work out? Because obviously the Supreme Court didn't feel bullied. They still denied it. But what it did show was that a lot of people, the American way, that a lot of people who see it as an injustice, and particularly people who are in the criminal justice field, felt the need to try and let the court know that this is a huge problem in our criminal justice system with juveniles right now. That's what they were trying to do. They were trying to convey that. And you want to say that they're bullying the court? I mean, your logic is not really sound. We are doing what is needed to keep the chat on topic, and you guys are doing good. If the Supreme Court panel is typically 8, why wouldn't cases wait to be heard when the seat is filled? The Supreme Court, well, Brendan never made it in front of the Supreme Court, Kim, so I'm not even sure how to answer that. If you're talking about the en banc is actually supposed to be more judges, but I don't know if you know this, but pretty much a lot of the circuit courts across the country right now they don't have judges. They don't have the full roster of judges. A lot of that is because during Barack Obama's presidency, Congress was obstructing anybody that he suggested. So that's a big part of why there's a lot of courts right now across the country, the circuit courts and stuff like that are short manned in terms of judges, because for 8 years it was very difficult to get any judge approved. So that's one problem that's happening with the circuit courts, basically across the country, not just any one place. It's across the country because for 8 years nobody was getting appointed. And I don't give a damn about the politics of it. Whatever your guys' politics are, you hate, love, whatever, Obama, whatever, Trump, whatever, Republican, Democrat, I don't care. That's not my point. My point is that a lot of judge seats have been empty because it was impossible for 8 years to really get anybody appointed. You can make of that what you like. I am not being political. I am stating a fact. Look, my moderators are my moderators are a little bit maybe overzealous right now, but that's because the chat's been getting a bit unruly. They will settle down. They're, just bear with us, folks. They're not doing too bad, in my opinion. They're gently reminding everybody here and there. It's, let's try to all be understanding a little bit here. I'm so heated about BD. That's why I started looking into this whole thing. BD started it. Yeah, I agree. Brendan's what drew me in. If I don't know if I would have broken out of what I don't know if I would have broken away the way I did and started looking into these cases and started taking the huge interest in criminal justice reform that I have taken if it wasn't for Brendan. Thinking about a 16-year-old kid getting railroaded like that in our country, and watching the smug nature of Manitowoc and Wisconsin, thinking that Brendan's confession is a good confession is just absolutely atrocious. So, Erekose, take a Dr. Pepper break. Yeah, I think I will actually. Thanks, T1. Good suggestion, buddy. It's an emotional topic for many of us, absolutely. We just need a better, easier way to be able to question the judgment of a judge and not just those in jail. I'm still unclear if Brendan has options for appeal. Okay, I'm going to try this one more time. Right now, Brendan is basically sitting stuck. He's dead in the water at the moment. That's not a forever thing. Okay, but right now he has to wait. Okay, he has to wait. But I guarantee you, the way that this case is going, just like Stacy says, everything about this case keeps getting stranger and stranger. Okay, something's going to emerge that's going to be able to help Brendan, and his lawyers are going to be able to use it to get him back into court. That's truly what I believe. So let me see if I'm not answering any part of your question here. Right now, Brendan is in a situation that's not ideal. It's not great. It's not, it's not the best position to be in. But that doesn't mean he has no options. It just means that at the moment he has limited options. Right now he's kind of stuck and idle right now. But that's going to change as more evidence comes out. That could change. That could very easily change. So, and if Zellner uncovers something that will help Brendan, she'll be handing it over to Drizzen and Nyrider, and they will be taking Brendan back into court. Let's see. He is sitting goose right now. New evidence needs to be found. Exactly. He's waiting for new evidence, but look, I'll put it this way. I'm confident that the evidence is going to emerge. I am confident that it's going to happen. The case is a mess. Absolute freaking train wreck. Okay, great, Laura. You understand? Okay, so that's where we're at with Brendan. He's in an unfavorable position right now, but that could very easily change, in my opinion. The negative comments towards Falcon that aren't about the case. Don't be rude. Yeah, please don't be rude. I know you guys, if you have a problem with Falcon, try to just try to move on, move past it. Thank you so much, Anthony. I'll keep up the hard work, buddy. Has Brendan ever been evaluated for Asperger's? That could explain why the cops were able to make him say whatever he was. I don't know about Asperger's, Rubber Ducky, but he did have a psychological evaluation. Asperger's was never mentioned, but what was mentioned is the fact that he is more suggestible, or at the time when he was 16 years old, he was more suggestible than 95% of the population. So that's significant. All the testing they did on him, he ended up, his results were all on the side of being shy and suggestible. He didn't really have a lot of the qualities of being assertive and being able to assert his will, essentially, or to fight back really in a situation with authority figures, because that's another thing he was susceptible to. He was very suggestible, especially when it came to authority figures like Fassbender and Wiegert. And I do this because I shudder to think of them as authority figures, but that's the way Brendan saw them. Let's see here. It has to emerge. My gosh, this poor kid, 12 years now. I wonder how anybody in their human mind believes that they had a fair trial, whether guilty or not. Oh, that's another thing. Brendan's trial, since you brought that up. No, he can't. No. The Supreme Court is the last stop in the federal courts. So he's already had his run through the federal courts at this point. I just don't see that. He's not going to be able to get back to the Supreme Court. Are knowingly unsubstantiated claims in the chat rude to the discussion? He was highly suggestible, absolutely. I may have, rubber ducky. Maybe that is the definition of Asperger's. But what I'm saying is that a psychologist that evaluated him didn't use that term. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. That term wasn't used. So I can't say he has Asperger's because I don't have a clinical psychologist or anybody that's actually used that term. So that's all I'm saying. All right. So to talk about Brendan's trial and to basically wrap this up here, there's two things about a couple things about Brendan's trial. Number one, there's the fact that so much weight is put on this freaking interrogation and confession that Tom Fassbender and Mark Wiegert fed Brendan, essentially. There's so much weight put on this. I mean, it's like it's not questioned by the state or anybody at all. It's not. There's nothing about it that's questionable. Even in the light of the fact that Brendan was on, he took the stand. Brendan took the stand. Okay, most defendants don't, but he did. He took the stand. He obviously got asked questions by his own lawyer, but then he was opened up to the prosecution. The prosecution had their chance to question him and question him and question him and try to trip him up and get him to whatever. He didn't do it. He didn't trip up. He testified very well. He testified, in my opinion, strongly, and yet nobody cares about that. Nobody cares. All that those idiots in the state of Wisconsin care about is this ridiculous confession that Tom Fassbender got. I just want to remind everybody the way that G-Man Moore described it. He said they had a nice story, okay? Because that's what a confession without corroboration is. It's a nice story, okay? So I wanted to point that out. So first point is, a confession that is absolutely convoluted and an absolute train wreck gets more consideration than a defendant's actual testimony at trial. See a problem there? I do. Second thing about Brendan Dassey's trial, and this is a big, huge part of how they were able to get the conviction on Brendan, because of Mark Wiegert and Tom Fassbender and the way that they manipulated him on May 20th or whatever it was when O'Kelly threw him to the wolves, basically threw him, to Tom and Mark, right? He throws Brendan to the wolves, essentially. Tom and Mark bully Brendan and tell him he needs to call his mom and tell him everything that they coerced out of him that day, because if he doesn't, they're going to call her and tell him himself. And I mean, that is just such a freaking loathsome tactic. They obviously don't feel like they had enough. They obviously didn't feel like it was convincing enough. And so they had to get Brendan on the prison phone telling his mom what they wanted him to tell her. Okay? They intimidated him, they scared him, and remember, Brendan is very suggestible. And he was afraid that they were going to go tell his mom, and in Brendan's mind, he might have thought, oh my God, my mom, what if my mom turns against me or something, just imagine the thoughts and everything that was going through Brendan's head when these officers were threatening him with this tactic. I mean, it's just deplorable. So it leads to the phone call that Brendan makes to his mother, where he basically says everything they wanted him to say to her. And it's on the prison phone. It's recorded. It gets played 3 times at his trial. It gets played, I believe, during or just after opening arguments. It gets played right after the psychologist that I was just telling you about that determined that Brendan was more suggestible than 95% of the population and all that sort of stuff. They played it right after his testimony to discredit him. And then they played it one more time at closing arguments. That call is a direct result of Michael O'Kelly and Len Kaczynski's ineffective, actually dereliction of duty is actually what I would call it. Dereliction of duty, because Len Kaczynski was acting as an agent for the state. How that's not enough to throw Brendan's conviction out and the confession, how it's not, how Len Kaczynski's behavior and Michael O'Kelly's behavior isn't enough to overturn Brendan's conviction is mind-boggling to me. But then you add all of the questions about the confession on top of Len Kaczynski and Michael O'Kelly, and it's still not enough. That's how you know how dirty Wisconsin is. That's how you know how bad it is with the courts there, because they're willing to continue to victimize a child because they don't want to admit they're wrong. Has BD received increased protection of any sort in prison since the new developments and the media coverage? I'm not sure. I don't think so. From what I understand, he gets along fairly well with the other inmates. I mean, that's another thing about Brendan. I'm glad you brought up that, actually. Another thing about Brendan, that when he was going through the 7th Circuit Court and stuff, and they were bringing out, a lot of the facts about him, and they were talking about that in the prison, when they describe Brendan's demeanor and the way that he, when they describe him as a prisoner, they use the words, he is exceedingly benign. Okay, exceedingly benign. Just think about that for a second. It's just, this kid wouldn't hurt a fly. I mean, I could seriously, when he was 16, I could seriously imagine Brendan stepping on a bug and maybe possibly even crying a little bit about it. That's the kind of sensitivity that I see in Brendan. I find it very difficult that he could have raped and murdered anybody. It's absolutely ridiculous to think that that's possible. Poison fruit, I would say it kind of is poison fruit of the poisonous tree, but obviously the Wisconsin courts aren't seeing it that way. I've always wondered that myself. The last 10 minutes of the recording is what the jury needed to. Yeah, that's another thing. Why Brendan's lawyers? That's where ineffective assistance of counsel kind of comes in for Brendan, because how in the hell his lawyers determined that the jury didn't need to hear that, the end of that, where he tells his mom they got to my head and all that stuff that he says. How his lawyers determined that the jury didn't need to hear that is just mind-boggling to me. Absolutely freaking mind-boggling. But anyway. This is why I'm actually of two minds on BD. I do agree there are some questionable things about his confession. And I respect that, Falcon. You're at least able to look at it and go, yeah, okay, I can't. There's certainly something, here, so I can respect that. I understand you're not, gung-ho for Brendan, but I can appreciate the fact that you can at least acknowledge that there's issues. So that's. Turn red, take a break. Let's see. We have not gotten an update yet. Okay, so I'm going to show you guys a couple things here. One thing I'm going to show you is about Brendan. This was from the innocentproject.org, and this is just a couple of experts and their opinions about Brendan Dassey's confession. So let me show you this real quick. All right. So what we have here is a document from innocenceprojects.org. got a couple of experts here giving their opinions about the Brendan Dassey confession. Okay, so we have basically here, the Brendan Dassey case brings national attention to the problem of coerced confessions. So down here we have Daniel Medwed, professor of law and criminal justice at Northeastern University, told the Tribune that Dassey's case could make courts more aware of the factors that contribute to false confessions. People and juveniles with mental health issues are oftentimes more open to suggestions and more susceptible to coercion, Medwed told the Tribune. Lindsay Malloy, professor of psychology at Florida International University, told the Tribune that Making a Murderer, the Netflix documentary series about Dassey's case, has brought the issue of false confessions to the forefront. And I agree. A lot more people are talking about juvenile, false confessions in juveniles, and even not just that. Judge Robner points out that among murder cases, among murder convictions where they have a confession, that 25 of all the exonerations of those of murder convictions, of all the exonerations of all the ones where there was a confession, 25% of the confessions turned out to be involuntary or false. That's a significant number. That's 1 in 4. That's 1 in 4 that are false. That's, some people may reason, oh, it's only 1 in 4. That's a lot. That's 25 out of 100, right? That's the whole point of it. That's not very good. That's really not. That's kind of horrible, really. So goes on to say, lay people, those who are not in the criminal justice field, have learned that false confessions have learned what false confessions are from this case and the techniques that can lead to false confessions, Malloy told the Tribune. People used to think that it was only physical coercion that led to these things. You can take someone like Brendan Dassey, a vulnerable person, and chip away in an interrogation like this and get a false confession. To further bring that point home that they were just making about that people think that only physical coercion could cause a false confession, that's wrong. And the Supreme Court, and this is why it's so tragic that the Supreme Court did not take the case, but they have in the past have made decisions or mentioned the fact that the blood of the defendant or the blood of the accused is not the only hallmark of a coerced confession or an involuntary confession. So what that means is that there's other things besides physical coercion, like hitting, and various things like that, hitting, pushing, slapping, whatever, any kind of physical, violence or anything like that. Not just, that's what it's saying, that those things are not the only hallmark of a false or an involuntary confession. That there are psychological tactics that can be in play that can just as easily work, especially with kids like Brendan, suggestible 16-year-old kids like Brendan. It's very, very, it's a huge risk. You don't believe me? Go look at Reed. Look at the Reed technique. Read the thing about the Reed technique. They tell you right there, and the Reed tells you themselves. Reed is the standard interrogation technique that is used across the United States. Okay, if you go and check out their website and stuff, you'll see in there that they say the full Reed technique should not be used on juveniles because the probabilities of getting a false confession go up tremendously as you're dealing with younger people, juveniles, because they have not developed a full, they have not fully developed their own self-identity yet. They're just not as sure of themselves. They're not as, they're just not. And those factors make them more susceptible to coercion. And Reed tells you that themselves, that it's not a good idea to use the full Reed technique on juveniles. So when Reed's telling you that themselves, you got to kind of take that seriously. So that's another huge thing. Like I said, the quote from the Supreme Court of the fact that the blood of the accused is not the only hallmark of a false or coerced confession. That's just basically saying that psychological tactics are very capable of working just as in a lot of ways just as well. Awesome, Julie. If you got an article on it, why don't you post the link for everybody? I was listening to Kraut's interview, and he said MAM filmmakers bought Brendan's life story rights for $5,000. Thank you, Erekose. Been wonderful as always. Between the three of us, we will get the right three numbers. Hope that's not true. Let's see here. That's crazy. Hi everyone. Erekose. Sorry I'm late. What can we do for Brendan? We can keep creating awareness for him. We can keep talking about his case. We can keep talking about why his confession is ridiculous. We can keep pounding and pounding and pounding and pounding on it so that nobody forgets. And so that when the day comes when he gets back into court, that there's going to be a crazy amount of awareness and that it's going to continue to be a huge issue. That it's not going to just go away and die down and go away the way that the state of Wisconsin wishes it would. We're going to be here. We're going to continue to pound on it and pound on it and pound on it. That's the way to do it. That's at least that's the way I feel about it. That's what needs to be done. We just got to continue to create the awareness, continue to talk about it, and be unashamed about it. Just continue to support, continue to create the awareness. That's what we do. And then we let and as we're doing that, we let the lawyers go into the trenches in the courtrooms and let them duke it out in there. And trust me, eventually, with enough support and enough people getting behind it, it'll happen. I'm confident of it. Too many people can't stand what happened to Brendan. Too many people just see the issues with what happened to Brendan, and they just are not willing to stand idly by. And you guys are perfect proof of that. Most of you that are here are exact perfect proof of that. You all are here learning about this because you saw what happened to Brendan and Stephen, and you couldn't sit by. You couldn't just sit there and go, okay, yeah, that's fine. Okay. Because you saw problems right there. And you've all started to dig into the documents, and you've realized that there's a whole bunch of other problems that you never saw in MAM, right? Right. So that's what it comes down to. Brendan's case is going to be the paramount example, like Wicklander and Zawalski, the law enforcement trainers say. They now use Brendan Dassey's confession as an example of what not to do when you're interrogating juveniles. Okay. Wicklander Zawalski is the second biggest trainer of law enforcement, detectives and stuff and law enforcement in the nation. The second biggest. Reed being number one. Reed is the biggest. But Wicklander Zawalski is number two. And Wicklander Zawalski now uses the Brendan Dassey confession to instruct its students there of how not to interrogate a juvenile. That is very, very profound, in my opinion. We're still here, not going away. Absolutely. No offense to Jerome, but okay. Let's see. Amberly, my earlier question of you was not a rhetorical one. If you answered it, I did not read the answer. OMG, now there's 3 to tell us, new ones to subscribe and hit. Okay. I live in Europe, but that touched me too. We all live on Avery Road. Thank you, Jerome. Let's see. This could happen to any of us or our kids. That's why I'm here. Absolutely. That's and that's the one thing that, I've told you guys before about my boss. My boss is the type of guy who basically feels like law enforcement can do no wrong. Okay? That's kind of just the way he feels. He's that way. He's been a victim of crime in his life. He, it's a big reason why I think why he feels the way he does. And I can understand that. But even him, when he was watching the Return to Manitowoc, the Dateline Return to Manitowoc and everything, he was watching that. And after he was done watching that, he called me. And he just said, "Wow. Oh, that kid got totally screwed." Okay? And so I started to talk to him. I go, "What struck you about it? What struck you about it?" He goes, "The entire time I was watching all the segments about Brendan, when I was watching that show," he said, "I was thinking about my own son." He was thinking about his own kid. And that and he was thinking that if a law enforcement officer had ever done anything like that to his kid, that he would be struggling to choke down the murderous rage that would be filling him. Okay? So basically, because his own kids, because he couldn't bear the thought of that happening to one of his own sons, he went against the law enforcement here in this case. He now believes that Brendan Dassey got screwed over. And it was amazing to me to hear him. It was amazing to me to hear him actually express that. It truly, I mean, because I'm not kidding, dude. This guy usually believes law enforcement walks on water. My boss. I mean, literally, he truly, like, pretty much believes that law enforcement walks on water, but he didn't believe that with Brendan. With Brendan, he broke out of that cycle, and I love it. Oh, thank you so much, Al Fallon. Lifelong front row seats to WrestleMania for BD. Absolutely. Big problem with false confessions is that they play people off against one another. They told Brendan that Steve was selling him out when he wasn't. Stuck between a rock and a hard place, most people. And that's interesting that Paul brings that up. That actually brings up another point that I want to address before we go here. Thank you for that, Paul. Is that they tell Brendan at the beginning of the interview, they tell him, "Oh yeah, Steve's over there. He's over there. He's going to start saying all kinds of things about you. He's going to try and put this on you, and then you're going to be stuck. Then you're going to, then this is all going to be hanging on you. All right. Skip forward to the end of the interview. Okay, the end of the interrogation when he's in there, when Barb's in there with him, and he starts asking Barb. This is terribly interesting. He starts asking Barb. He says, "What if Steven tells a different story? Could that help?" And Barb didn't understand what he was saying. So she's like, "Oh, what do you mean? What do you mean?" And so Brendan says, "Well, like if he started telling a story like I didn't do nothing." You see what Brendan was doing there? Brendan was taking the statement that the law enforcement officers, that Tom and Mark had made to him at the beginning of the interrogation about how Steven could talk and potentially bury him. But Brendan was taking that statement and he was flipping it on its head and going, maybe if Steven was to talk and say, I didn't do this, couldn't that get me out of this? That's the way he was reasoning, because he knows he didn't have anything to do with it. It's thank you for bringing that up, Paul, because yeah, that absolutely is just mind-boggling. But yes, they did try to use that against him. They tried to convince Brendan that Steven was talking about him and trying to hang him, but Brendan didn't fall for it. And then tried to turn it on its head and use it as, what if Steven could talk and get me out of this? Okay, it's to me, it's very interesting. But yes, they were using some pretty deplorable tactics. Very deplorable tactics to get at Brendan here. Poor Brendan was trying so hard. It's perfect. It's the perfect time to explain the control question. Yeah, that's true. I guess I could. All right, I'm going to explain the control question. Okay, we're going to explain the control question one more time here, and then I'm going to show you something else that some people have been talking about today. That's in it's the final thing I'm going to talk about, but it's to do with KZ's motion for the quick DNA testing. So to go over the control question real quick again, the control question is a question that was made up by Tom Fassbender. Completely made up fact. It's absolutely untrue fact. Okay, completely not true. Okay. Tom Fassbender says that, or tells Brendan that Teresa had a tattoo on her stomach that she didn't have. It's absolutely proven there's no tattoo on Teresa's stomach. But Tom Fassbender, for the control question, makes up this fact and asks Brendan, do you remember that? To which Brendan says, and he's like shaking his head and says, that he didn't remember it. Now, had Tom Fassbender stopped right there, the control question would have been a success because he would have made up a fake fact and Brendan would have denied it, and therefore that would have given credibility to the confession because Brendan didn't just agree to something that Tom Fassbender told him, right? You understand? So it would have worked to suggest that Brendan wasn't being suggestible, that he was resisting. The problem is Tom Fassbender goes one step further. I think it's because he didn't like the wishy-washiness of Brendan's answer. And he goes one step further and he says, do you disagree with me when I say that? To which Brendan immediately starts going, oh my God, I don't want to be in disagreement with the investigators because he's been getting mentally conditioned the whole time. So as soon as Tom Fassbender kind of leans forward and is like, do you disagree with me when I say that? Brendan is automatically in defense mode and goes, no. Becomes every bit as suggestible as I've been saying. He then becomes extremely suggestible. He says no. Basically, no, I don't disagree with you means yes, or basically means I agree with you. If you say no if by Tom Fassbender saying, do you disagree with me? And Brendan saying no, he's basically saying he agrees with Tom Fassbender that Teresa had a tattoo that she didn't actually have. That is not Brendan resisting. That is Brendan buckling. That is Brendan giving in. That is Brendan being suggestible. There's nothing about that. The way that Brendan says no, there's no way there that you can construe that as Brendan resisting. It's absolutely a farce that the state of Wisconsin, Tom Fassbender, and the on-bank majority have claimed that proves that Brendan was resisting, because it proves exactly the opposite. So, and that's why I'm wearing this shirt. So there you go. Well, I had these made up. And those of you who are waiting for me to fill your orders this weekend, early Monday and Tuesday, I'll be getting those out to people. I have just been super, super busy, just buried, absolutely buried with work and everything else. I just have been absolutely just slammed. So I'm going to be getting shirts out next week, folks. I promise. Shirts are going to be flying out of here next week on Monday and Tuesday. I promise. Didn't the control question still prove that Brendan was lying because TH didn't actually have a tattoo? Well, yeah. That's what I'm saying. That's why it proves that Brendan was. It's not okay. So yes, that's why it proves that Brendan was. They say it's Brendan resisting, but it's not. It's not Brendan resisting. It's Brendan buckling, and that's why when he says no, I don't disagree with you, that means he's agreeing with a fake fact. That means he buckled. That means he acquiesced to the investigators and what they wanted to hear. So I hope that makes that clear. It's absolute, a train wreck. I didn't even hear that used during the trial. The control question is something that Tom Fassbender talks about every time he does an interview. Anytime he's in front of a camera or a microphone, he talks about how Brendan was resisting them, And he uses the control question as an example of it. And it's absolutely proof of exactly the opposite of what he says it is. So, absolutely. So how come it's not obvious to everyone that BD was lying? I don't know. I'm not, Karen. I'm not sure what you're fishing for here. Maybe I'm missing it. Don't make it T1 cry, you guys. Okay, so moving to the last thing here, folks. Before we go, this is about KZ's motion for quick DNA testing. This is something that some people were bringing up to me today, and I thought I would just show you what this is real quick because I thought it was interesting. So this is something that was found, and basically what this is saying, and this is about the brief that was due on 12/20/18. The MST +3 that you're seeing is an indication that the brief will be due 3 days after the motion for stay is decided. So basically right now, they're waiting for the decision on the motion of the quick DNA testing. And then when that decision comes through, Zellner will then have 3 days to file her brief. If it's not stayed, if they deny the stay, then she will have 3 days to file her brief. So right now, the brief is on hold, is essentially what this is basically saying. I just wanted to go ahead and kind of throw that out there for people because obviously nothing was filed today, and you may be going like, oh my God, what happened? So I believe this is what happened. There's now a little bit of a grace period because she filed that new motion, and once the appeal court decides on her motion for the quick DNA testing, one of two things will happen. They'll grant the stay, and then the testing will happen, and the brief will be put on hold, or they will not grant it. In which case, Zellner will have 3 days to file her appellate brief. Basically regarding Stephen's case. So I just wanted to show everybody that real quick. So that's about it for tonight. I hope you guys were, oh yeah. Well, Mr. Capaldi, here you go, Mr. Capaldi. Ooh. Those of you who don't know, Mr. Capaldi and I, we like to play around, have a little fun, and that's from I don't know if any of you have ever heard the song "Werewolves of London" by Warren Zevon, but that's basically what that's from. And Paul and I just like to have fun. So, and we do that sometimes. And thanks for sharing. That was that. I was wondering what the next step was. What if the testing is granted, but the bones cannot be provided because they have been lost? Well, if they've been lost, then that's a problem. All right, so we're gonna switch over to Stacy. We're gonna play a couple songs, and then we're gonna call it a night. So let me go ahead and get.
How do you pay a debt for someone you owe 36 million? You don't, it might as well be a bajillion. Oh, this is what you do. You charge the one you owe with murder. The debt goes to. Now first, you gotta have a body. I don't know how you get it, but I know it is natty. Find that car that body drove. Park the car in the yard, throw the body in the stove. Now this part, overemphasize I can. You got to have law enforcement that likes to plan.
someone you owe 36 million. You don't, it might as well be a gajillion.
Oh, this is what you do. You charge the one you owe with murder. The debt goes to. Now you cook that body up, all well done. Just leave some pieces out for identification. Like the tibia, piece at 23.
Oh, wait. You ain't following me.
But this brings me to the important part of the scheme. You got to own the lab and forensics team. Pick one out, the dullest knife. Get her to deviate from protocol first time in her life. How do you pay a bill for someone you owe 36 million? You don't, it might as well be a bajillion. Oh, this is what you do. You charge the one you owe with murder. The debt goes to. Now I can't go into detail. It would take too long.
This would become a 10-part docu-song.
So I'll just give it to you. Oh, in point form. Do all these things and you can toot your horn. You first have to get a kid to confess to the story of freedom. Block all the officers.
You're welcome, T.
It's where it leads them. Tell the media things that they don't.
Happy holidays to everybody.
Don't worry, they don't ask questions. They just nod their heads. You gotta lock the corner from the scene. You got to beware now of dogs that are mean. Lose all the cameras, no, don't take a shot. Multi-label everything you got. You gotta keep all the evidence locked up safe. If anything gets broken, fix it with scotch tape. And repeat. The bolts were intertwined, the wires from the ties. Yeah, repeat that lie. How do you pay a bill for someone you owe 36 million? You don't, it might as well be a gajillion. Oh, this is what you do. You charge the one you owe with murder. The debt goes to. Now say you get away with all this stuff, but 10 years later you just don't have enough. Go write a book, try to cash in, don't worry about the ethics. There's none in Wisconsin, cause if there are you would have been until then sued from all the domestic violence victims that you abuse. How do you pay your bill for someone you owe 36 million? You don't, it might as well be a gazillion. Oh, this is what you did. You framed an innocent man and his nephew kid.
Strange. I ain't strange. I'm sick of this world. I'm sick of suffering. Don't get strange. I'm sick of this world. I'm sick of suffering.
Don't get strange, no, I ain't getting strange.
Don't get strange. I ain't getting strange.
I'm sick of this suffering. Can't stand the pain, don't get strange.
Well, we know
What this already?
Oh, we can see they got you, Brendan Dassey. Totally
Insane, don't get strange.
Everything they got.
Questionable evidence.
Gotta buy.
Man, a walk.
But
It makes such sense. While they're in the game, don't get strange. Get strange, oh no, I ain't getting strange.
Don't get strange. I ain't getting strange. And that line,
that predatory sweaty thing he says you can throw away. He's a legal stain. Don't get strained. Who's to blame? Don't get strained. Don't get strange, folks. Don't get strange. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe. It's been a pleasure hanging out with all of you. We'll see you in the Hangouts afterward. And, you know, I think you guys are all superstars. So please tune in again next time. I should have something very special this weekend, by the way, folks. So keep your eye out for this weekend. It should be interesting. So just keep your eye out. Keep your eyes open this weekend. You might find that we got something exciting going on here. So that's about it for today, folks. We'll see you.